Good morning and welcome to the New York City Hybrid hearing on the Committee on Fire and Emergency Management. Please silence all electronic devices at this time. Also, please do not approach the dais. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and one of us as Sergeant at Arms will kindly assist you. Chair, we're ready to begin.
Good morning. I am Joanne Ariola, and I am Chair to the Fire and Emergency Management Committee for the New York City Council. This is our first hearing under the leadership of Speaker Menon, and I am absolutely honored to again chair this committee. I would like to acknowledge members of the committee who are here today. Council members Wong, Council Member Maloney, Council Member Palladino, Council Member Purina Sanchez is joining us via Zoom. Today, we will examine the city's implementation of Local Law 6 of 2025, which is a bill I sponsored last session that requires the city's Department of Transportation to consult with the FDNY prior to approving open street applications, certain bike lane projects, and further requires the FDNY to confer with any affected firehouse prior to approving open street applications, bike lanes, and major transportation projects. When we passed Local Law 6 of 2025, we did so in the spirit that as elected officials, as well as affected community boards, we should be notified in a timely manner for any transportation projects, any major transportation projects, such as the introduction of bike lanes and open street applications. These types of roadway projects have created an unintended burden to certain neighborhoods. We have heard numerous complaints of fire trucks nearly colliding with plantards and bollards that have been suddenly placed to close off a street. We've also seen more traffic congestion due to closed off lanes, resulting in drastic increase year by year to emergency responses. Additionally, my office has been contacted regularly by constituents not being able to have access to crosswalks due to transportation projects. Recently, we have heard from the disabled community regarding inadequate accessibility to sidewalks. The impetus behind Local Law 6 was to prevent these types of issues from happening and by addressing how the city is conducting business. Prior to today's hearing, we provided the FDNY with a list of specific projects that require notification under Local Law 6. We anticipate the administration will supply the committee with a full and thorough demonstration that they are in compliance with the law. We will also look to DOT, who has sent representatives, and thank you for coming, to answer questions on their compliance to Local Law 6 of 2025. We want to know how they are using the feedback from the members of the FDNY, a life-saving agency that always puts the safety of the city's residents first. I would like to thank our committee counsel, Josh Kingsley, our senior political analyst, Will Hongash, and my amazing chief of staff, Phyllis Cirillo, for their important work on this committee. I would also like to thank those from the public as well as representatives from the administration who are here to provide testimony. I will now ask for committee counsel to administer the oath. On the dais, we have Kevin Woods, Chief of Fire and Operations, James Aarons, Chief of City Planning Unit, Kevin Malloy, Captain City Planning Unit, FDNY, Sean Quinn, DOT, Rick Rodriguez, DOT.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just all raise your right hand and just affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and to answer honestly to council member questions? Okay, seeing that you acknowledge that, you may go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Ariola and members of the Fire and Emergency Management Committee. My name is Kevin Woods. I am the Chief of Fire Operations at the New York City Fire Department. I'm pleased to appear before you today to discuss the implementation of Local Law 6 of 2025, which places requirements on the Department of Transportation and the Fire Department with regard to proposed open street applications and major transportation projects affecting city streets, including open street applications and bicycle lanes. I'm joined today by Chief James Aarons, who oversees FDMY's City Planning Unit, as well as Captain Kevin Malloy and colleagues from the Department of Transportation. In the case of a fire or emergency, the time that it takes for the local fire company to reach the scene is critical. It is not hyperbole to say that time lost in transit can be a matter of life and death. The fire department is always seeking the most effective path to carry out our mission to save lives and property. We are grateful to the council for your attention to this issue. We are also grateful to the Department of Transportation for their collaboration and coordination. A key part of their mission is to make the streets safer for everyone. Is the FDMY EMS personnel who respond to crashes and accidents, so we support DOT's efforts to reduce these injuries and deaths. The city's Vision Zero initiative includes redesigning streets using proven safety treatments, which may involve bike lanes, pedestrian crossing interventions, lane reductions, or other major transportation projects that require coordination with us and other New York City agencies. In as dense a city as New York, our challenge as government agencies is to find a way to accomplish both missions at once. Local Law 6 of 25, passed by Chair Ariola in this committee, provides a roadmap for both agencies to improve our working relationship for the benefit of all New Yorkers. The fire department works with the Department of Transportation on street redesigns, including major transportation projects, in several different ways. Importantly, DOT engineers incorporate standards that both agencies have collaborated on over the course of a decade as part of their designs. This includes modeling custom FDMY vehicles to ensure necessary turn-in radii and providing emergency access lanes through closed streets. Additionally, we have several points of contact. Senior leadership from both agencies meet to discuss challenges. FDMY borough commanders meet with their DOT borough commissioners periodically so they can discuss challenges they are experiencing in the field, and DOT can provide advance notice of major transportation projects that are in the planning stages. As prescribed by Local Law 6, the Department of Transportation provides plans to the fire department in order to coordinate FDMY feedback. Those plans are submitted to the fire department city planning unit. They then seek the input from local divisions and firehouse or firehouses that respond within the project area. In addition to seeking input from the firehouse, the city planning unit is staffed by experts who review each plan and, where appropriate, conduct an in-depth analysis. They work to understand how the changes to the street would affect emergency response and what changes to the plan would mitigate delays or encumbrances on operations. Then feedback is provided to the Department of Transportation. In some instances, DOT and the fire department staff also meet in the field to run fire apparatus through the proposed geometry of the project, a process that has resulted in modifications to the design before the project is finalized. The Department of Transportation reviews the feedback from the fire department and at times makes changes to the projects as a result. Changes can be made during the design phase or after implementation. To give the council some idea of the types of changes that occur, some recent examples are as follows, involving planter, granite block, jersey barriers. Based on FDM input at West 103rd Street in Manhattan, Montague Street and Scott Street in Brooklyn, Park Avenue in the Bronx, Queens Boulevard in Queens, 31st Avenue in Queens, and recent design coordination at Woodside in Queens, and two projects in Manhattan, 35th to 36th and 17th to 18th. This process is not without its challenges. To begin with, there are a lot of major transportation projects, and the permanent staffing of the planning unit consists of an officer and 2 firefighters. The number of major transportation projects can be quite large. As a result, the unit has been working on a large backlog of projects since the law went into effect. This team is also responsible for conducting planning analysis of numerous other projects that are unrelated to the streets, including a typical building design, large construction projects, and other private development throughout the city. So the work of reviewing bike lane proposals is only one aspect of their portfolio. Though city planning disseminates all the bike lane plans to the local firehouses for review, it can be a challenge for the affected firehouses to produce feedback. Members of the city planning unit have specialized training and background and analysis of projects. For instance, this unit includes a firefighter who's a professional engineer, but that's not the case for the typical fire officer or firefighter in the firehouse. The projects are not necessarily spread evenly across all firehouses. Some firehouses are in areas that contain many major transportation projects, and those firehouses receive a large volume of plans to review. Naturally, their primary duty is responding to fires and emergencies, and the training and preparation that goes along with those operations. When the list of projects grows and creates a backlog of requests for feedback, the process slows down. That said, I'm happy to report to the council that over the course of the year that this law went into effect, we have learned from our experiences and we are taking concrete steps to improve and refine this process. We know that we could do a better job of providing timely feedback and coordinating with the Department of Transportation to mitigate issues that affect emergency operations and street safety. Both the Fire Department and the Department of Transportation have new commissioners at the helm, and the commissioners and their senior teams have already met to discuss these topics to ensure open lines of communication. One of the changes under consideration includes amending the letters that the planning unit provides the DOT to provide more of a specific information that DOT needs in order to better comply with Local Law 6. The Fire Department is also looking at ways to support the needs of the city planning unit. As it stands, an enormous amount of work is being done by a small group of people, and they are not able to do it as efficiently as we would prefer. We're exploring ways to assist with the workload that is created by the numerous proposed major transportation projects and open street applications. One recent change that we have already made is that we are adding 2 light-duty firefighters to the unit to assist with reviewing projects and communicating with local firehouses. We expect these additions to pay dividends and improve the productivity of the unit. The Fire Department is reviewing the lessons that we learned during the first year under Local Law 6. We know that we could do a better job. We will continue making improvements to this process so that we create better outcomes for the Fire Department, the Department of Transportation, and all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I'd like to recognize that we've been joined by council members Felder and De La Rosa. So I'd just like to, you mentioned a number of areas that you recently had to remove implementations that were hindering fire trucks from getting to fire hydrants. So when you say recently removed, these were given to you how? How did you become aware of these locations?
The open streets, I don't believe any of the plans of the open streets were shared with us. Somehow it came to us through maybe a complaint process, and what we do is we have the borough commanders coordinate with the DOT borough commissioners. We'll go out to the site and we put boots on the ground and we have a conversation, and maybe they don't know that we need 15 feet access to a hydrant, or blocks are blocking affecting our turning radius of the apparatus where we have to get into that open streets. With the open streets projects, yeah, we take that into consideration. They do give us a 15-foot lane, access lane, but sometimes there are blocks on the front of those streets, and we have to maneuver our apparatus around that. So again, additional coordination and communication is key.
Okay, so what I want to say is that we, as a committee, received complaints from those areas, and then we notified FDNY, and that was how you actually became aware of it. So that's what's happening, and I want DOT to be aware of that. The way FDNY is finding out about things is not from the DOT. It is from our offices, this committee, and the complaints that we get from our constituents. Since local law 6 was enacted, how many project notifications has the department received from DOT as it pertains to local law 6?
So we received 95 plans. So the way that process works is when we receive that plan, it goes to our planning unit. They are experts in their field. They do a phenomenal job. They work under the Bureau of Fire Operations. Then gets disseminated to the firehouses. We have a chain of command. Everybody has to know in between the division, the battalion, and the firehouses. They also created a feedback form to make it simpler for the firehouse, which we're kind of tweaking at this time. Then they send that back. The firehouse sends that feedback back to the city planning unit. They incorporate the comments into a letter back to DOT. And those letters may state that we have no objection or we're open for further discussion. And we'll identify the reasons why we can't support it at that time.
Are you able, at this committee hearing, to provide the committee with the number of firehouses that have been conferred with concerning the project notification process since the enactment of Local Law 6?
Councilwoman, yes, we sent it to all firehouses. So every firehouse has been consulted. They've been given a copy of the project and the feedback form. So they were all sent out to every firehouse. When they come to us, they are sent a chain of command. They go from the divisions. So the divisions are aware because they do encompass large areas. Some of these projects might encompass 2 or 3 more firehouses in the area. So the divisions decimate them to the units, and the units are to give us feedback.
And what is the percentage of feedback that you get?
I'd say we're about 40% right now.
40%. How does the department receive that feedback? Is it via email? Or you have meetings with your local firehouses? How do you get that feedback for the projected projects?
So when the law went into effect, we created a form. So we send the form via the division to the houses. They fill it out, and it comes back via email to a database, and we could see who's completing them and who's not completing them. And Captain Malloy next to me could explain. He actually goes out to assist the firehouses with the more complex projects. If he wants to elaborate on that.
Give him the mic.
So, good morning. So what is more the direct question? You want to understand the process of
Yeah,
how the firehouse received the information?
Receives the information and then gets it back to you. Is it via email, or is it snail mail, or is it some type of Google document?
Since the inception of PIDS, we're talking about now. So since PIDS has come into our desk and a new format, a new way. Well, Kevin, if we want to talk about the technical end of it, how Chief Aaron's just said there's a database. The units fill out the form, and then it's uploaded to the database. And then we receive all that information, and we go through and we review the information that the firehouse has submitted. And what we'll do is we'll recognize if there's a particular area that might be more complex where we might have to use our expertise to evaluate it further.
Do you know how many firehouses? Because you said all the firehouses would receive that information, that notification, if there were a project in their area. You're receiving 40% back, but I'm sure not all of the firehouses are getting that. How many of the firehouses, the percentage, give or take, have received that form?
So if it's 95 projects, some of the projects go to more than one firehouse because it may span more than one administrative district. And some firehouses have multiple projects. So I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we will get that for you,
Who's
Chair.
responsible for that feedback at the firehouse?
The officers, the captain and the company officers. The captain who runs the firehouse, he consults with the company officers and the firefighters as well, but it's ultimately up to that captain.
And what is the timeline for that feedback?
We don't have a timeline right now for that feedback.
But there is a timeline for implementation. Would that be correct?
Yeah, there's a season where we implement our projects, and one of the things that we're working on through the improvements to the process is setting a clearer timeline to ensure that we're getting that feedback.
So if you don't get the feedback and it doesn't meet your implementation needs, do you implement without receiving the feedback?
Last year, yes, we did implement a number of projects without receiving the feedback. However, all of our projects, as the chief said in his testimony, have been designed with over 10 years of input from the fire department. We're making sure that all of the projects all the fire trucks can turn, that the access is maintained. We are aware of the issues that are needed around fire hydrants. So any of the projects that we're putting in place aren't just they reflect all of those conversations that we've had for decades.
Chair, one
Okay.
thing I want to add to that, which is the power of local law 6 is to make sure that there's coordination happening on the front end, but one of the things that we are doing consistently and throughout is checking, seeing, is this working in dialogue with the fire department, make sure that if the geometries don't work, we come back in.
Right, and because through the process of last year working through refining the system, we still have met with Firehouse on the ground in several projects like out on Woodside and 31st Avenue, 31st Street as well, making sure that those borough command and borough commissioner conversations are happening. So there's been other avenues of communication on these projects.
Is that something that you oversee? Because that is not the feedback I'm getting when I'm going to firehouses.
So can you explain the question a little
You're
more?
saying you go on the ground to firehouses, speak with the captain, if he's the one in charge. But when we're on the ground and going to firehouses and meeting with our firefighters, that's not the feedback we're getting.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we've done it for every single project. There's definitely projects that are more complex where we've proactively met with the fire department on the ground. We bring out spray paint, we design the street in spray paint, bring out the fire trucks, run the fire trucks through the new geometry, make tweaks to the design, and we're always happy to do that with anyone who requests, and I think as we refine this process, that might become more of a commonplace activity.
So what training or instructions do you provide to the firehouses in order to determine that they are qualified to evaluate the risks of the proposed changes?
So if there's a very complicated project, not every project is similar, some are more complex than others. I'm going to have Captain Malloy explain that. He does go out to some firehouses and explain the process to them so they could fully understand it.
So the question is, what type of training are we offering to the field units so they'll understand what the project holds for them
Correct.
if it's implemented? So that question will vary depending on a lot of factors. There might be a very complicated plan to look at, so I myself might say, well, the unit is not going to understand the ramifications of this, so I might reach out to the unit. I might know somebody who works there. I'll send them a formal email with the plan attached, and I'll write something up to say, FYI, this is being proposed for your area. Here's a couple things you should be looking at, and can you, in return, tell me a few things about your area that will help me understand how to review this better. So that's one of the ways.
So it's not an in-depth training, it's more of a conversation.
Yeah, it's more of a conversation. It's a lot of it is anecdotally. If you, let's take a protected bike lane, for instance, it reduces the real estate in that street, right? So when you have 2 lanes of traffic and you go down to 1 lane of traffic, this is a lot of the feedback we get from the firehouses for this specific project. As per New York City traffic law, when you have emergency vehicles responding, you have to pull over to the right. Now, when you have curb, 8 feet of bike lane, 3-foot buffer, 9-foot travel lane, parked cars, they can't pull over to the right. And we can't go around that traffic to go into oncoming traffic because they can't pull over to the right either. So that's a big, big obstacle for us. So, as well as laddering the building. So with our fire apparatus, it's all about the fire department, it's all about life safety. When we have to ladder a building, we have optimal positioning from the building line to the inside of the apparatus. It should be optimally 32 feet, 25 to 35 feet. We're getting pushed away from that. So our scrub area, that's the area where the bucket could touch the building, is drastically reduced. Less windows, less height, and it's we have to pull in on an angle sometimes. Sometimes we're 40 feet away from this building. So it's way beyond the specs of how we operate our apparatus.
Which I'm so glad that you went into that deeply into how it affects your apparatus and your operation. And that is why you should never, DOT, implement any change without the confirmation from the FDNY. I'm also hearing from FDNY that is not a simple answer. So it does take them time to fill out a form, make sure that they're getting to the right person, make sure they're getting the right information, go out to the location, make sure that their trucks can make that turn and navigate. So if you don't hear back from them in a matter of 3, 4, 10 weeks, you should not be going out without getting some type of feedback from the FDNY, whether it was before local law 6 or now especially since. The answer that you gave as yes shows that there is a blatant disregard for the safety of the people of this city of New York when you're putting planters in front of fire hydrants. I have one more question, and then I will yield to my colleagues. Has the department either received any complaints from other elected officials, community boards, or the public about accessibility issues in areas where these types of projects have been carried out?
Any complaints from the public? Any not to our city planning unit directly.
Okay, and to DOT?
And can you define what you mean by accessibility?
Well, have you gotten any complaints from elected officials, community boards, the public, or anyone who has said this implementation is a hazard, fire trucks can't get down, there was a fire on my block, fire trucks were hindered? Do you get complaints to your department?
The main complaints that we've seen around some projects post-implementation have been through social media. There hasn't been a lot of direct communication to my department, maybe some contact to the borough commissioners, but there hasn't been like a widespread issue around communication on that front.
Yeah, what I'm going to say is that if there wasn't widespread communication on that front, we would not be having this hearing, because our offices have all been contacted. Our community boards have contacted both the DOT and the FDNY. Maybe it is through the borough commissioner, maybe it is through the commissioners, or at some level above, but we do believe that it is filtering down, and it should be filtering down. I now yield to Councilmember De La Rosa.
Thank you, Chair. You asked a lot of the questions that I had in mind, but I did want to ask about coordination with the DOE. A lot of the open streets are within, at least in my district, schools that ask for the open streets and then program them during the day because of space constraint. What is the communication among the agencies when it's a DOE open street and then there is an emergency that happens?
So all of our open street applications and proposals, thank you for the question, go through review through fire department operations. There's been several occasions where the fire department has declined to approve open street, and we haven't moved forward with those projects, specifically on some of our higher volume corridors like Steinway Street and State Street in Brooklyn. The school open streets are all required to have manned barriers. So anytime the street is closed in front of a school or around a school, those barriers should be attended by either school personnel or some partner on the ground to make sure that the street can be opened in need of access for the fire department. And that's standard across all of our open streets. And the schools tend to have more personnel on the ground as well.
Yeah, we look at, when we receive that, we may or may not object, and first line of business is we coordinate with the principal and whoever's in charge of the school. And for the life safety, there's a lot of kids out there playing. And similar to what DOT just mentioned, as far as moving the barriers, that's critical for us because we have to respond to that school.
My other question is, in my district, for example, I have a major hospital. And so there could be open streets or plazas in the vicinity of where that hospital is. How are those type of plans coordinated when we know that there's going to be like ambulances, for example, back and forth within that parameter of those open streets?
From the fire department side, we high profile occupancies like hospitals and schools, we will actually have familiarization drills if there's an open street. We will have our units physically go there and come up with a plan. We won't use the open street to get from point A to point B unless there's an emergency at that hospital or that school. But otherwise, we'll divert around those open streets. We put that in our planning, and all of our local units are notified of that. Will it increase response times for life safety? 100%. But for responding to that hospital and to that school, we do have familiarization drills on site.
Is there any data that DOT can share with us about when complaints are generated and a project is tweaked or amended based on complaints or things that happen after the open streets has been approved? Does the department have data they can share back with the council on the percentage of times that these plans are amended or changed or the application is denied? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, that's something that we can get. I think we are very open to making changes once a project is implemented. I think a lot of our frequent communication is with the fire department on how we can make those changes, making sure that the planters and blocks that we have on the street, if they shift after we put them in, are being shifted back into place. And yeah, happy to provide any information if there's any specific locations, but also generally as well. Mm-hmm.
I just have one question before I go to the next person. So to just amplify Councilmember De La Rosa's question of what, how many plans were either changed or scrapped because of the fire department's response, and you don't have that, and we really would like to know. But we have 13 projects that the fire department had to go and ask to be fixed because of complaints that we received via social media, via our office, via community boards, and that's throughout the city in all of our districts. And then the fire department had to go out recently and adjust that. So that's just 13 that we were notified about. There are many, many more. So I think that what you're telling us is not exactly what's happening, in practice. Exactly. I now yield to Councilmember Wong.
Thank you, Chair. On Monday, February 9th, there was a 4-alarm fire on Dongan Avenue. It's a family home. It's right at the border of my district. It's concerning to me because hundreds of fire trucks dozens, not hundreds, had to respond to the scene. And Queens Boulevard used to have, to access local streets on Queens Boulevard, there used to be 2 driving lanes, but now we're only down to 1 because one driving lane has been converted to bike lanes. And now, before the concrete barricades were put in, at least emergency vehicles can go down the bike lanes and turn into local streets and respond to 4-alarm fires such as the one in Dongan Avenue. But now with the concrete barriers in place, there's only 1 driving lane, and there's just no way emergency vehicles can get to quickly respond to a scene. So what I want, my question to you is, in that situation, what happens? Do you wait for the traffic? Do you wait for the car to get unstuck from the snow? Because that's what I saw. And then, or you wait for the delivery truck to get out of the way because that's what was holding up traffic. All right, those concrete barriers are concerning, and I know that they're coming if you have closed streets. I walked down 31st Avenue 26 blocks of closed streets, and they were there. The concrete barricades are there, and they obstruct emergency vehicles. I mean, what if there's a fire? How do fire trucks go into these closed streets? So that is a concerning. That's something I saw on Monday, February 9th, and then please respond to that. What is being done to relieve the emergency vehicles so we can get to the scene quickly? Thank you.
I'll start from the fire department. That was a very tragic fire. We got there pretty quickly. We had about a 4-minute response time, but a fourth alarm fire, we have 200 fire personnel and EMS personnel responding. And as I discussed prior to that, when you, again, anecdotally, if you're ever sitting on a highway and you're on a 2-lane highway and it's going from 2 lanes to 1 lane, what happens? We're sitting in traffic, it bottlenecks. And that's what's happening there. By going from 2 lanes to 1 lane, you do have bottlenecking. There's nowhere for the cars to pull over to the right, and that's what you witnessed.
Is there a fix? Is there a fix? Because there will be more of these emergencies, and the fire trucks will need to go down Queens Boulevard and to get to these sites.
Yes, there is a fix. So we communicate and coordinate with DOT. So there's something called cutouts. So every so many feet, they would have a cutout for traffic to move to the right. And we have to have further conversation about cutouts. You're right? Nobody wants to lose their real estate or their parking spots, but we need cutouts for apparatus, cars, delivery trucks to pull into so our fire apparatus could respond.
Are these cutouts happening right now, or are they already done, or they're still in discussions?
I used to be the Staten Island Borough Commander. We have part of Brooklyn in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. I met with them on scene, and it was a recommendation that I made years ago, and they complied with that recommendation.
Can you talk about Queens Boulevard? Do we have cutouts on Queens Boulevard so emergency vehicles can like use the bike lanes or access them in emergencies?
I'll give that question to DOT.
I know there's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's something we can work closely on identifying additional ones. I know we have changed parking regulations along the service roads to make sure there is space for people to pull over, do loading, make sure we're reducing double parking. That's a standard. Yes, sorry. That's a standard tool that we try to implement in all of our projects, and definitely open to adding more specifically on those service roads on Queens Boulevard. Yeah, sure. Happy to.
I'll let you know on specific locations where there is a need for these cutouts. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
I'd like to just make mention that Councilmember Ressler has joined us, and now yield to Councilmember Palladino for questions.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. Open Streets was implemented back in 2020. It's been 5 years, 6 years, going on 6 years now since its implementation. If it wasn't for Chair Joanne Ariola, who implemented Local Law 6, DOT, you've gone wild on our streets in New York, with very little regard to, not maybe you directly, but DOT in general, the Department of Transportation, has gone absolutely crazy on every New York City street, with little or no regard for our firefighters and the safety of the people of the city of New York. If it was not for Local Law 6, this planning would have never happened. The very idea that Queens Boulevard looks as it does, areas of Jackson Heights looks as it does, is insane to me. That we have put bike riders and bus lanes and bike racks taking up parking spaces over firefighters and putting out fires, which are becoming more and more as we do the batteries and everything else. We see house fires that never happened before. So while you are butchering our streets and limiting our firefighters from doing their jobs, and we're hoping that they get consulted In my area in particular, not much, but I will say this, we do have Vision Zero that's been implemented. Vision Zero, whereas the safety of pedestrians in the town of Whitestone and Bayside, uh, they cut out all these and made these curbs so much larger. I have a hook and ladder on 149th Street and 14th Avenue. I was there for lunch. The guy, I went over to see their kitchen for other reasons. And I said, hey, guys, what's going on with the corners here? Did they talk to you? And the simple answer was no, they did not. So you had no idea whatsoever about these four corners or two corners that they were going to completely change the traffic pattern. This is ludicrous and should not be happening. So we need to see a much bigger input on DOT, or I'll even stretch it and dare say enough is enough with bike lanes and taking bus lanes, and greater consideration should be given to the closed streets that we're doing. This is absolutely ridiculous. All right, now I'd like to ask several questions here. To what extent are emergency service agencies involved in the decision-making process when determining the final placement of bicycle lanes?
So as per the previous major transportation law and local law 6, the fire department has been consulted over the years. The predecessors of Captain Malloy and us set up a system of reviewing complicated projects, especially protected bike lane projects where we're adding.
Everything's complicated now because you wreck just about every street in the city. So everything's going to be real complicated. So we have to figure out how we're going to keep our firefighters safe and their vehicles able to get to the buildings that they need to go. How about we entertain the idea that we start to dismantle some of these ridiculous and hazardous implementations that's been made by Open Streets? Has the new commissioner of the Department of Transportation entertained that idea by going over some very dangerous areas such as Queens Boulevard, such as different areas in Brooklyn and the Bronx? How about we redo some of the damage that's been done? Has anybody thought about doing that?
Councilmember, just want to jump in here. I appreciate the candor that you're giving this. One of the things I just want to unpack from our side, I know this is the Fire and Emergency Management Committee, but on our side, we see ourselves as also contributing towards the life-saving efforts for New Yorkers.
How?
When we go,
See yourselves as lifesavers. You're the Department of Transportation. Give me a break.
Thank you for the question. The reason why we go to certain corridors is because of the data that we're seeing on crashes. And one of the things that we do to reduce those speeds in those areas is to provide hardening. And sometimes it can be like parking protected bike lanes. Sometimes it can be a narrowing of streets, or like the corners where we'll make it a little bit, wider turns to make sure that people are going a little bit slower when they're making those turns. It's all a part of a balance that we have to make. It's 364 days a year when we're trying to make it safe for people. But also we have to make sure that the fire department has that emergency access.
You're presenting something here, and I guess you could tell that I'm not a fan of what DOT has done to our streets, because Manhattan and the 5 boroughs, we've existed just fine before you started to do all of this. And our firefighters were able to do their jobs. What I'm asking you is, how are we going to fix this very broken? Can you imagine a concrete slab that weighs probably close to a ton? Honestly, we're looking at firefighters here, but what about people who drive cars and we're trying to make a turn, and guess what? We bottom out or we slam into it because it's dark and we can't see it. I mean, this is just ludicrous. Let me move on. Has EMS or FDNY ever formally objected to proposed lane placement? And if so, how often were those objections overridden?
There's Thank you for the question. There's been several occasions where we've worked with the fire department in locations where there was concerns about lane reductions. In those instances, we ask for data around where they're seeing slowdowns. We can then implement other measures to ensure that the congestion or the concerns that they have about lane reductions, like the cutouts we were speaking about before, are implemented as part of that project. Where we do lane reductions and where we have installed protected bike lanes, we see the safety improve for cyclists, pedestrians, and
Cyclists and
motor
pedestrians again.
vehicle operators. Have
You know, cyclists and
15
pedestrians have existed in this city since the day I was born, and before that, I just don't understand. Okay.
So 15% reduction in injuries to motor vehicle drivers when we install a protected bike lane.
Okay.
And last year was the second safest year on record in the city in terms of traffic injuries and fatalities, which sort of adds up to all of the projects that we've been implementing. All those incremental changes add to this larger life-saving effort.
So I just wanted to say one of the things that I like to give an example of is the benefits for some of these projects. We have a protected bike lane. We'll often include a pedestrian island for people to gather while they're waiting for the light to change. So it does a couple of things. One, it makes it easier for cyclists to come without interactions or frictions with cars, but it also provides a place of refuge. We literally call them refuge islands for people with accessibility needs. I'm a parent. When I was pushing my daughter around, I used to hang out on the pet island just to wait for the light to turn. And the magic of these bike lanes is actually, the secret I like to say, it's actually for the pedestrians. It shortens the width that you have to cross.
I understand that. And I'm sympathetic as a pedestrian, as a mom who pushed a baby carriage. I get all of that. But we're not really tackling what we need to tackle here. And that is, we're not here to talk about pedestrian safety or bikers' safety. We're here to discuss the safety of our firefighters and making sure that the rules of the road are created so that our emergency management and our police, as well as our firefighters, EMS, can get to where they need to get to without obstacles put in their path, which is, as you guys, you're intelligent, you know what's going on. And you could sit here and you may be agreeing with me on 90% of what I'm saying, because you too see the lunacy that has taken place in this city. I've said it again, they've coined me many times. This is not Amsterdam. This is New York City. 9 million people live here. Okay, whether you're in a little one-family house or you're in a 30-story, 60-story building. This is Manhattan. This is New York. And we're not handling it as such. It's like we're some little country in Europe. It's not the case. Okay, I want to say that I thank you very much for your time, and I'm wrapping it up. Yes.
Before I yield to Councilmember Ressler, I just would like to say you've already noted that you proceed without feedback when you've not gotten feedback. Is there any follow-up when you haven't gotten feedback? Do you follow up with the fire department before you go out and put these implementations in place?
Yeah, I do want to also respond to the council member too. We share the concern, and we are sister agencies. Our goal is never to create an issue for the fire department or emergency services.
I know that. I understand
But
that.
we do want to improve the communication, and we're working every day to
But
do
it
that.
all
We
comes
share
down to
the
DOT.
we share the goal that you're stating today. And
Okay, so
and I
that's
think
what we're here
Yep.
to
Right.
really bring
Bring home.
forward,
Yes.
Exactly.
and so that we can move forward. Okay, Councilmember Ressler, thank you for your patience.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Ariola. It's good to be with you. Thank you for having me today. And Councilmember Palladino's a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. We come at this issue from a little different perspective, and I was one of the few council members who voted against this legislation because I was concerned it created too vague a process between the Department of Transportation and FDNY that could potentially gum up the works to implement life-saving projects and protected bike lanes across my district and across the city. and because there already is healthy coordination between the two agencies, as I imagine you would all testify to today. Um, we've seen with multiple bike lane projects that this local law has been used in litigation to try to slow down implementation of life-saving projects, and I want to make sure that these two agencies, under new leadership, under a mayor who is deeply committed to expanding the network of protected bike lanes across the city of New York in a more expansive and expeditious way than ever before, that we're seamlessly working in partnership. So forgive me for being late a little bit, but Chief, if you could just lay out what's FDNY's process for consulting with firehouses on bike lane projects, and how do you convey that, ensure that that feedback is conveyed to DOT in a timely manner? Do you have set timeframes? Could you just
We don't have
elaborate?
set timeframes.
Should
We're,
you?
we're working on that.
So you're
we-
planning to have set timeframes?
We don't want to put a time frame on it because
not?
all the projects are different. Some are more complicated than others, but let me answer your initial question. So we received the plans from DOT. They go to our experts in city planning. They're sitting next to me. And they evaluate the plans. The plans are then forwarded to our division. There are two divisions per
Approximate
borough.
time frame for how long it takes them to evaluate the plans?
Well, it goes through a chain of command, division, battalion, firehouse. Remember, when we respond to a fire, we respond initially, the report of a structural fire, with 3 engines, 2 ladders, and a battalion chief. So you could have many people, many units coming from outside that area. So that's why the division and the battalion have to see where these, say, protected bike lanes are, where there's going to be a future bottleneck.
Have you looked at how long on average it takes the planning team to review these projects?
Again, each case is different. They review them.
A range?
Each case is different. They
I understand,
review.
but is there a range for the different cases? I understand every case is
No,
different.
every case is different, so there's no range.
Well, I
so
just
they
mean some cases are easy and simple, and they have it's a very broad street, wide street. You can review in a day or two. Some cases may be more complicated. It may take you a week or two. That's the kind of range I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that. So they drew up a feedback form for the companies. Even though this is a priority of ours, our main priority is life safety. So our fire companies right now are doing 5, 6, and 7,000 runs a year, which is about 18 a day. Each run could be an hour. A fire, they'll be there for 3 or 4 hours. So we're trying to get this. We don't want to rush this. We want it perfect. We want it right.
Absolutely.
Besides the snow right now, every company, all 350 plus fire companies in New York City are shoveling out hydrants right now for the next week. We inspect buildings every day. It's endless what we do besides responding to fires and emergencies. So
no
we
need
can't
to
put
remind
we can't put a
heroism of the
time
fire
frame on that.
Yeah.
We have to take it step by step and
To be
evaluate
fair,
that.
I think everything requires data. Everything requires metrics. We have to hold ourselves accountable as public servants to ensure that we're reviewing information in a timely manner and trying to ensure that we're working effectively across city agencies. So I would just humbly request that FDNY put timeframes on every step of this process. Could be a range, could be a generous range, but it's helpful to hold ourselves accountable because if there are no timeframes to confer with the planning division and then to confer with firehouses, then projects can just linger forever. Yeah. And we don't want the situation where DOT is getting zero feedback on a project, which the chair mentioned earlier is happening. And so that the FDNY is providing timely information so that we can incorporate it in to make projects better for all stakeholders in the community.
Absolutely, I appreciate that feedback.
Is that something
Yeah,
you
so
would consider?
we'll look into that. We actually added 2 members to our unit just recently. Firefighters, light duty firefighters. We have some professional engineers in the works. We also have some urban planners. We put some messaging out there. So, and we also brought in a new administrative, one of our PAAs.
That's great.
To
after the
to streamline this process from getting the plans from DOT to the city planning unit through the chain of command to the firehouse. So,
could you just walk me through? So the planning team takes a look at it first. They make recommendations. That goes through the chain of command. That's a centralized process. That's kind of FDNY headquarters does that. And then it goes to the firehouses locally for a review?
they don't make recommendations. They give it to the firehouses, and we want the firehouses, the boots on the ground, to tell us how this could be problematic for fire operations,
Right.
how this could be problematic for responding in that area. And so the city planning unit evaluates it, then sends it through the chain of command.
Got it. And could you give us an example of when this has worked well, where feedback has been provided to DOT, and how long that process has taken for FDNY to conduct its review and provide that feedback to DOT?
You want to take that?
Thank you.
So you'd like an example of when the local firehouse or the review team of the fire department notified the Department of Transportation that there was a problem with one of their projects, and then we communicated, coordinated, and revised the plan so it would work for what the fire department was saying they needed?
And
is that basically what you're asking?
And approximately how long that took?
Okay, that never happened.
It never happened. You've never provided feedback to the Department of Transportation that's been incorporated?
We have provided feedback to the Department of Transportation, but the feedback was not received the way the fire department asked for a plan to be revised.
I mean, I can give examples in my district.
Where? Bedford Avenue?
Bedford Avenue, we modified.
Forced to do Bedford Avenue.
We modified the timing of the traffic light on Bedford Avenue to allow for FDNY to pull out. We allowed for FDNY to turn in the opposite direction, coming out of Bedford Avenue to safely access sites in the neighborhood. I'm surprised to hear that the fire department is so vehemently against protected bike lanes when this is a proven evidence-based approach that will save lives across our city and has saved lives across our city.
The fire department is not against bike lanes. We're against the protected bike lanes. But we're working with DOT to improve that process, to have additional cutouts. Again, remember, we are responding down the street. New York City traffic law, people have to move to the right. And with a protected bike lane, they cannot move to the right. To give you an example, prior to you coming in, I gave the same example. You have the curb, you have an 8-foot bike lane, a 3-foot buffer, 9 feet of parking. Typical city sidewalk is 13 feet. And there's just no place for the cars to go if the emergency vehicles are responding. So working with DOT, similar in the past, we've had cutouts, and it takes up some parking spaces. But these are some of the solutions that we're trying to come up with DOT, we're not against bike lanes. That's
I
not
just will
what we're
conclude
saying.
in saying I'm pretty disappointed in the fire department's responses to my questions today. Let me not caveat that. I am incredibly disappointed in the fire department's responses. I'll wait for Jason to finish. I just want to say plainly, in response to your all's answers, that I'm incredibly disappointed in the fire department's responses to my questions today. The mayor has made clear on his agenda that we are going to save lives by implementing evidence-based approaches to improve street safety across our communities. Bike lanes in the middle of the roadway are not it. That's what leads to deaths. That's what leads to serious injuries. We know what designs work, that protected bike lanes will save lives. And the orientation that I'm hearing from the fire department today is that you're unwilling to consider the evidence-based approaches that make our community safer, and that you're unwilling to work cooperatively and collaboratively with the Department of Transportation to make projects better. I think that we have a lot of work to do with leadership at City Hall to bring agencies together under Deputy Mayor Kerson's leadership to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're working collaboratively to improve safety across each of our communities. You have an essential role to play in safety in our communities, and I admire the men and women of the fire department enormously. What you all have been doing through this storm and what you all do every single day is nothing short of heroic, and I am immensely grateful for the work you do across my community and across the 5 boroughs to keep all of us safe. But this is an important area for collaboration. It's just one of many areas for collaboration where I think the fire department can quite frankly do better. But this is an important one, and the mayor's made his agenda clear, and I hope we can all get on the same page to make that happen. And I have to say, I'm more convinced than ever that I made the right vote last year. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Interject?
Yeah, sure.
I know you came late, Councilmember Ressler, but had you been here sooner, you would have heard the DOT say that they often go without any type of recommendation from the fire department. We've heard the fire department say that they're putting in place new measures under the new commissioner so that they can have designated people to look for these forms, to fill them out. But what they're telling you is their job is to protect the people of New York City from dying in fires and from fires spreading. They're not saying they're against bike lanes. They're not saying they're
Yes,
against bus
they did
lanes.
testify to
He
that.
doesn't like the protected because
That
it's
is what we're talking
difficult
about.
for them to navigate it. But we do need to protect our pedestrians and our bikers and our
That is
buses.
what a protected bike
However,
lane does.
there are other measures that can be taken, but the DOT is moving forward without their input, and that's what we gained before you got here.
I've
So
never
know
I've never
you're
seen a
not in favor of the bill,
I never have
but
seen a project.
because of the bill, people will be safer.
I have never
And
seen a project in my district where there has not been consultation between DOT and FDNY. I believe that already exists on a consistent basis.
If there was consultation, respectfully, we would not be having this hearing, because you and I agree on one thing: lives have to be saved.
Yes.
People need to be able to utilize their streets, pedestrians, bicyclists, cars, buses. We agree on that.
100%.
And we're here to make sure that these two agencies, now under different leadership with their
Yep.
commissioners,
And a new mayor.
and a new mayor and a new speaker, do what we need them to do to make sure everyone can live safely.
I look forward to being a part of that
Great,
conversation.
perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now yield to Councilmember Felder, and then there was a follow-up from Councilmember Wong.
Thank you very much. The Councilman Ressler is leaving. Does it have to do with my questions?
I'm sorry, I'm chairing a hearing at 11:30. I had a bill that was being heard across the
Okay. I'm sorry that Councilman Ressler is leaving. I'm sure that you'll have an opportunity to watch this on Netflix tonight if he's interested. I did not want to get into this discussion, but Councilman Ressler's comments forced me to respond, because by being silent, it means that I'm agreeing in some way to what he's saying. So there's this old corny joke about somebody interviewing an accountants for a job, and they ask him how much is 1 + 1, and everybody says 2, 2, 2, and finally there's some guy says whatever you want it to be, right? Oh yeah, that's the guy I want, right? The statistics, my background, although I was never good at it, believe it or not, I'm a CPA by training. So you can get any numbers you want. And I don't rely on statistics about, when Councilman Ressler says more lives have been saved in this city, I would say the following. I do not trust the numbers in any way, and it's been years, back to my days in the Senate, that I've requested details that I've never been able to receive. Not from this, this is a new administration, but it's consistent. It's been that way consistent. The city, a number of years ago, decided on a mission, and the mission is to increase the use of bicycles all over the city, and if possible, they would get rid of the cars entirely. And it's not merely about bicycle lanes. You see a trend in a variety of places. I will give you one example. Ocean Parkway is a state highway, 3 lanes in each direction, with a 25-mile-an-hour, that's the speed limit. We know that during the de Blasio administration, initially the cameras were only supposed to be by the schools, then it spread further, and the safety of the children, and it spread further, and everyone who who, who had some experience in government, that it was never going to stop there, that cameras were going to go everywhere. And they initially started with the speed limit slowing down in addition to the cameras in school areas, which made sense. But everyone knew as well that that was only the beginning. Ocean Parkway at 11 o'clock at night looks like FAL Schwartz Toy Factory with the little cars just hopping along at 25 miles an hour. When the city says that safety has increased, even if it were true, and it is a lie, but even if it was true, you know what? Make it 5 miles an hour. You'll increase safety even more. And you know what? Let the cars park entirely. Safety. In addition, where are the statistics about bicyclists who have injured people? I have a man on my block, an 80-year-old man who is passed on, who was as active as could be. I mean, certainly more active than me, irrespective to my weight. But he was out early in the morning. He was always active. He got hit by a bicyclist. He was in the hospital for months. Where are the numbers? Can the city, and this, I just want you to understand my frustration. I'm not posing to you. It's to the subject matter in its entirety, to the discussion that we're having, which is outrageous. And Councilman Ressler, that's why I'm upset he left, because he was like the topping on the cake. He's disappointed with the fire department testimony and then walks out. And I like him. I won't say I love him. I don't know, but I like him. I certainly like him and respect him. But that was what we call in Yiddish, mishuga, nuts, nuts. For him to say that he was disappointed with the fire department testimony, especially since he didn't hear the beginning. So I just would say is the city has city bikes all over the city on a mission. This is all a mission that started years ago, not today. And this administration may be in favor of more bikes. We're not discussing, this is not about this administration or anyone sitting here, but this has been a mission about increasing bicyclists. They closed Prospect Park entirely to traffic a number of years ago to give bicyclists more place to be able to ride safely. There are a variety of things that have been done. But there is no effort. Let us say that should be the way. Where is the effort upon the city? I have a bill that cannot get passed, which would mean that anybody using a city street, which includes bicyclists and now the electric bikes and all the other bikes that have increased, would mandate anyone using a city street should have to have a license plate. So when this guy knocks over this 80-year-old man and kills him ultimately, no one knows where the guy he wasn't wearing a mask. That's not the issue. He hit the guy and it disappeared. That was the end of it. I was driving on Bedford Avenue. A young woman from Brooklyn College came from the opposite side of traffic, going in the other direction, slammed right into me, I don't mean personally, to my car. I was not on a bicycle. Please forgive me. She slams into the car. and then falls down. And I say, what are you doing? And she says, starts screaming that I didn't ask her how she is. Okay? She's on the outside of traffic. There is no enforcement whatsoever. Anyone on a car, it's almost like if you're in a car, you are evil. If you are anything outside of a car, it's okay. It is a free for all. And the city has continuously, just one last thing, I'm sorry. Yeah. I have 5 more pages. This is a courtesy because I respect you so much. Yeah, I want you to know the truth. When they asked me originally, do I have any questions, you can ask them. I said, no, because the probability is that my colleagues ask the question and then that's what we do as elected officials. We want to hear, I'll talk about myself. We like hearing myself. So I repeat the same question over again some other way. I didn't want to, but Ressler's question, Councilman Ressler, like really, got me going. So I would just say that there are no statistics about injuries from bicyclists. None whatsoever. And the city is safer than it's ever been. So, okay, maybe not. And there's no numbers on that, right? And as I said to you, if you take the cars and slow them down to 5 miles an hour, even, it'll be even safer. What kind of crazy stuff?
Councilmember, we would love to give you a briefing on the data that you requested specifically about
you can give me a briefing, but let me tell you, don't do it after Councilmember Ressler speaks. I would love to do
I'll let
that.
you go first,
I
so that
would
way we
just
won't have
say,
this problem.
I would just one last comment, Chair.
Yes, one last comment.
Where is the statistics from the city about the use of city bikes? They have installed city bikes all over the place, all over the place. I do not, I want to know, where are the statistics that show whether, for example, if there are 20 bikes on a corner, how often are they used or not used? I know how many corners have the bicyclists, and maybe sometimes some corners, no question, some corners are never used. There is a vacuum. There is a vacuum that exists, and all I would say is that the firefighters do not in any way accept what Councilman Ressler said to you. He had a hard morning, and he came in here, and you got the blame for it because it was outrageous.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. We do have 2, and I ask you to please be brief with your follow-up because we have to. No, not you. On the follow-up questions, Councilmember Wong and Councilmember Palladino, try to be brief and brief as succinct as you can with your answers because we want to move on to the next portion of the hearing.
Okay. Yes.
I did not try being succinct.
Okay. You did well. Hi. This is a general question about closed streets and how would fire trucks or emergency vehicles drive into a closed street when it's closed. For example, again, 34th Avenue, Jackson Heights. I use it, okay? It used to be open, now it's closed from 69th Street to Junction Boulevard. So how would emergency vehicles get into that street? What if there's a fire in that block, in those blocks? And who's there to move those concrete flower pots so fire trucks could move in? Can you answer that? Anybody?
The closed portions of 34th Avenue aren't closed with anything heavier than a French barricade, the metal barricade, which can be lifted out of the way. We have people on the ground to ensure that those barricades are moved for the fire department. And all of our fully closed streets have fire access lanes designed into the design so that they're never blocked for fire department access.
What about for who's there to lift them up for if they're ambulances or access or ride cars?
They're staffed. The part of the way that we operate the program is making sure that there's staffing to allow emergency egress.
So there are people standing there, like during the street closure, to move the barricades.
Not standing there full time, but there's people on the ground, and we make sure that the materials are light enough that they could be moved by the fire department if needed.
And this is true for all street closures.
All open streets, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Member Palladino.
Thank you. Very quick, very brief, very succinct. How's that? In some cases, bike lanes are being added not because they are appropriate or necessary, but for a specific corridor, but simply to satisfy an annual benchmark quotas under the street master plan. Now, for this reason, I am reintroducing Intro 375. Intro 375 is sponsored by me. Is a local law to amend the administrative code of the city of New York by removing bus lane and bicycle lane benchmarks from the streets master plan and repealing related definitions. This legislation will eliminate mandatory quotas and allow for more thoughtful, safety-driven approach to street design. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
We're going to move on to the next portion, so if you just give us a moment to set up. Thank you. No, you're staying. You're staying. Yes, this is for you. This is all part of this part of the hearing. I didn't say public forum. I said the next portion. Thank you. I would like to review a couple of the areas that were on the list, and we can put some graphics up so that you can see them. If everyone would please take note of the cameras, and if you cannot see it for any reason, we can share the photograph with you. What we're looking at for those that are online or may have trouble seeing this graphic is Area 1. It's Montague Street from Pierpont Place to Clinton Street. The area hosts approximately 2.5 blocks of low-rise, non-fireproof, mixed occupancy, commercial and residential buildings. This is a high foot traffic area filled with restaurants, schools, apartment buildings, medical offices, retailers, and train stations. As you can see in the photo, a fire truck is pulling up. There is a fire hydrant that's circled in red, and you will notice there is a corral for a city bike corral, a boulder, sanitation bins, and plastic ballards. The picture shows the fire engine unable to pull next to the sidewalk because these obstacles are there. The obstacles are in the space of the 15 feet on each side of the hydrant, which is supposed to remain clear for fire operations. Everyone seeing the photos? This is all of the same area. So my question here is this an area that you collaborated as the fire department with the DOT and approved this configuration with trash bins, large blocks and boulders, and plastic ballards?
So this is, we have this on our list. This is, doesn't, it was not shared with the FDMY according to this, I don't know if it stems from the local law, but of course I want to speak all about life safety and how life safety for the FDMY is critical. We need access to that fire hydrant. Everyone thinks 15 feet. We like to say 30 feet. It's 15 feet in each direction. We would like more than that, right? But I know there's barriers, no pun intended, that get in the way. But we need 30 feet access to that hydrant. Similar to talking about the protected bike lane, where we want the vehicles to move to the right, which they can't, so we can get down the street. It's similar to a fire hydrant. If we don't get that pumper that you see, that fire engine, into that hydrant, the other responding apparatus cannot get past them, which means people trapped in that building, we can't access the windows with our ladder and bucket apparatus. They need, their position is the front of the building. So it's a big coordinated effort with the FDMY, and that's why we need access to that hydrant. We need that 30 feet. We can't have any barriers whatsoever.
And we respect that in our designs, specifically making sure that nothing is in with the 30 feet coverage. On Montague Street specifically, it didn't meet the definition of a major transportation project, so it wasn't submitted through the portal. However, we did an on-site with the local house and have moved all of the barricades that they indicated were issues post-implementation. So we were out there with them working to make sure that anything that may not have been within that 30 foot, if anything shifted or moved, we've since moved it and had that on-the-ground coordination.
We happen to have a firefighter here that will testify later, but all of these items are still in place. You may have been told that they were removed, but they were not removed.
I'm not removing them, however, we're making sure that they're not within that 30-foot envelope.
If you look at the photograph, there's not much room to move them where they wouldn't be in the way of that fire hydrant. There is no reason for bins, boulders, and the bikes to be in that area. Look at how close it is. Yep. And the firehouse was against it, and you went ahead with it. Let's go to the next, please. The next is Court Street, from Skimmerhorn Street to Sackett Street, approximately 12 blocks of low-rise, non-fireproofed, mixed occupancy commercial and residential buildings. This is another high foot traffic area filled with restaurants, schools, apartments, retailers, medical offices, and train stations. Are you you'll stop at that? Okay, just hold on one second. We'll get to it. As you can see, there are bollards. You can see the red circle of the fire hydrant. You can see the bollards. You can see a large boulder, and you can see a fire truck not able to gain access close enough to the sidewalk to reach that hydrant. According to the members of the FDNY and DOT, it created a fire safety hazard in this area by altering one-way street from 2 lanes into 1 lane with an interior bike lane and left curb, which pushes the left curb parking lane into a floating parking lane. This creates a serious hazard, as hydrants on Court Street are located on the left side. Access is impeded. Before the alterations, the fire engine had direct access to that hydrant, and now the fire engine must attempt to access the hydrant across 2 lanes, approximately 22 feet. Additional hazards in this area cited by members of the FDNY are the difficulties of turning onto the perpendicular streets due to the floating parking lane. Fire apparatuses must make wide turns in order to successfully enter streets on a right or left turn. The alterations impede the available width to create necessary turns. Other hazards on Court Street include boulders, plastic ballasts, permanently affixed bike racks, and planters. Hazards implemented by major alterations by the DOT have also created significant traffic in both areas, which impede drastically on emergency response. FDNY, can you share your expertise on these concerns?
Yeah, similar to my last response, we need 30 feet for that fire hydrant when the cars are parked directly on the curb. You'll have 8 to 9 feet. A car, the width of a typical car is about 6 to 6.5 feet. So we could tuck in there pretty nicely if we have the 30 feet. Once you have that protected bike lane, we need more than 30 feet because you're coming from a distance away from that curb now. And you have to make a sharp turn into that hydrant, which means we could be blocking the street as well. So all of these additional obstructions affects life safety. Court Street, those are all non-fireproof buildings. Non-fireproof, they're combustible buildings. The fire takes off. Large life harboring institutions, a lot of restaurants there, commercial occupancies as well. So yeah, these are life safety measures.
And for the DOT, do you understand the danger of the ladder being unable to reach the windows of residential buildings?
We're happy to work with FDNY on the width and distance needs. This is the first time we're hearing about the additional feet needed beyond the 30 feet. So happy to have those conversations.
Wouldn't common sense planning tell you that? Yeah, really. Wouldn't common sense planning with your engineers tell you that? Shouldn't common sense planning with your engineers tell you that? On 1/23, an email was sent to DOT noting the very same conditions that I just mentioned. I'm familiar with the Court Street design because one of my constituents owns a store that's affected by that redesign, which is how I came to know about it and look into it. We sent out a request for information from DOT, and we were met with the usual response that they conferred with the affected firehouses. Obviously, we are here in this hearing to hear directly from members of the FDNY because that was not done. And this letter confirmed to us from that firehouse that an email was sent on 1/23 to the DOT, and to date, they have not received a response, nor has the condition changed. And in this case, one of their biggest concerns is that the ladder is unable to reach the residential building. Okay. As we can see, the image that's being shown is an FDNY ladder truck unable to reach the window of a residential building on 31st Street in Astoria. 2 firefighters are in the bucket of the ladder truck, and there is at least 4 feet of space between the bucket and the window. FDNY, can you share how the ladder not reaching a window of a residential building can affect fire response and the safety of the firefighter, as well as a person who may be looking to be rescued?
Absolutely. I'm very familiar with this project. We met at the site, and I also responded back. This is a protected bike lane where, similar to what I explained previously, vehicles cannot get out of the way. So working with DOT, my recommendation was everywhere that's under the L. So between the columns where the hydrants are, I recommended no parking between those columns with delineators, striping of the road, and no parking signs. No parking, no delivery trucks, nothing. This way, our apparatus, our engine apparatus would have access to the hydrant, and our ladder apparatus would have access past those parked vehicles. And I requested that be done also on the opposite side of the street as well, because the hydrants, pretty much the city main runs down the center of the block. The hydrants are usually all on the same side of the street. So I requested that to be on the opposite side as well. But we know, everybody knows, hopefully everybody knows that that project was stopped. But I think it's in the works of getting going again.
And that's a problem too. Each time a project is stopped or a lawsuit is brought, the administration appeals, even when the lawsuit is won, which is what happened to a community on 31st Avenue. We just need a moment for the next portion. Don't go anywhere. I do have a question, though, in the meantime for DOT. If you see, in this particular case, an elevated train station, which hinders a fire truck as is, and what would make you think that it was a good idea to put all of those impediments near businesses and homes that could go on fire and obstruct a fire truck from a ladder being stretched for their safety and access to a fire hydrant? Like, what
I think one of the
process do you
issues is
use?
on that specific location is that I think with the L already in place, the issue isn't the bike lane. The geometry didn't really work beforehand anyhow.
So you just you made
It wasn't the
even,
bike lane that made it difficult for the fire
made
department.
it more difficult. The L is something that the department has had to. This is the city. We have trains. We have train trestle. But what you did was further impede their ability to save lives.
Can I ask what the point is of the boulders? Like, what is what's their purpose? I mean, why, who thought of boulders?
The main reason we have to put the boulders in those spaces is to keep vehicles out from parking in them. A lot of those spaces are created especially at the corners to improve visibility for pedestrians and people who are crossing the street. What we found over the years is that even if we have paint or the plastic bollards, people still park in those spaces, creating a visibility hazard. So we had to employ something a little more intense to keep the cars out of there.
But the boulder is blocking many of the fire hydrants that the car would block. So, and I don't know what type of apparatus would need to be used, but when those boulders are in front of schools and such, I don't know who you think from that school could move a boulder that, as Councilmember Palladino pointed out, weighs probably a ton. Are we ready?
Just for the record, I mentioned previously the FDMY was against protected bike lanes. We're against we're not against protected bike lanes. We're against the complexities that it brings on, and we're willing to work with DOT.
I think I did clarify that when I spoke to Councilmember Ressler. We're not against, we just don't want to impede safety. The video we're about to see shows an FDNY fire truck stopped in the street that is blocked by a giant flower pot that has flowers in it. The pot is filled with dirt, and 4 firefighters have gotten out of the truck to move the planter so that the fire truck can go down the block. The video began with the firefighters already trying to move the planter, and we watched over 1 minute elapse until we see them move it enough distance to allow the fire truck to pass. We can assume that more than that time had passed, since the video starts with the members of the fire department already out of the truck struggling with the planter. How much does having to move planters or boulders that have been placed to block off streets to vehicles by the DOT affect response times, FDMY?
As you could see, we are problem solvers. We are very good. I'll admit that. We're the best. But the intensity of fire doubles every 30 to 60 seconds. And that increases our response time and it affects life safety.
I will note on this specific project, we've made dramatic design changes based on feedback from the community, the council member, and the fire department. So this video was taken very early on in the life of this project, but we've made changes to really ensure that all the access needs are as available as possible. So we did take a lot of feedback from fire and seeing some of these videos too and changing that design since it was first implemented.
Thank you. We ready for video 2? Thank you for your patience while they're getting it together. The next video shows a fire truck responding to an emergency. The fire truck comes up the block and is blocked from continuing on to the next block due to barricades being in its way. The truck now has to begin backing up to try to go a different way to respond to the emergency. When that doesn't work, the firefighters resort to backing up down the block from which they came from. Let's just complete the video. Can we just note the time lapsing when they are going to a fire and they cannot maneuver because they cannot K-turn out of this maze that has been created by the DOT not conferring with the fire department in the proper fashion and not putting public safety first. As we look at this video, FDNY, how does this affect your response time to emergencies? I know it's redundant, but it cannot be said enough times.
Again, it affects life safety. There has to be more communication and coordination between the FDNY and DOT prior to these projects coming off the ground and having some more FDNY input.
And has FDNY complained to the DOT about this? And if you have, do you have stats on how often?
We don't have.
In general, not this particular.
What we
it
do
could be
is
this particular and other instances.
sometimes it's a little too late, but when we come across a project like that, we try to have our borough commanders meet with their DOT borough commissioners. We put everybody in a room. Everyone got to know each other. Maybe it's time for another one of those meetings, and they meet on the ground with the local units. So that coordination has to continue. And if we knew before we had that run, we would make recommendations to widen that pathway, to move those planters further from that intersection, whatever it may be. and we do dry runs with the apparatus to make sure that works.
And this is the same corridor where we made those changes. That project specifically, we've had a lot of on the ground, I think even with Captain Malloy, where this is one of those places where we spray painted on the ground, had the fire truck run through the motions. I think one of the issues that came up there was just that the planters did shift out of position, and that's a thing that we're constantly working on, and then receiving the feedback and making design changes to make sure they don't even get there in the first place.
Right. So what we're here to do is make sure that you guys are proactive and not reactive. And that's what Local Law 6 does. And that's why it's imperative that it is followed. We ready for the next video? This was just the other day. You can see the snow is on the ground. This video shows a snow-covered street. The person recording zooms in on a planter that is covered in snow that is in the street in the space that is supposed to remain clear within 15 feet of a snow-covered fire hydrant. The recorder marks that DSNY cannot plow the space because the planter is in the way.
On this, we did get the concerns on this specific corridor and went out very quickly after the initial complaints came in and moved those planters to make sure they were out of the way. This was a case where the planters were pushed out of location because of the DSNY plows, so we were able to put them back in place.
So we have a picture of it. They're still there.
Okay.
See, what you're saying and what is factual, two different things. And that's the problem. You cannot come here and under oath misrepresent the truth.
So
Even if it's the truth you're being given, you should have checked prior to. I mean,
well,
it's
I
not.
do want to just be clear. Prior to this, we did specifically talk about this location, and I did receive photos showing that the planters had been moved back in place. So if there's something different that's happened, yeah, I'm happy to take different dates and like talk about when the
what I'm
photos
saying
came
is
in.
when
But we
they
are
say-
responsive to it. So if there's still an issue, I'm happy to go and address it. I was under the impression it was taken care of.
I don't have it. So I think the most common sense question to ask is, when we have issues with these planters, why do you, A, put planters by hydrants in open streets? And why do you put them back after you know they've created a problem and they had to be moved out of the way, whether it's FDNY or DSNY? And why do you put planters on your open streets that are within the area that is supposed to remain clear in the street, which is 15 feet on either side of a fire hydrant? You're just placing them for aesthetics, not for safety. And that's unacceptable.
Yeah, so one of the main reasons that we place planters on our projects is that it changes sort of the feel of the corridor. It makes it clear that the corridor is not is for pedestrians, it's for people. It gives everybody a sense that this is a place that we need to slow down, watch for pedestrians. It's something a little bit different. It does, in fact, add to the safety of the corridor. It helps improve visibility, and we're always wanting to ensure that we can keep the hydrants clear, and we're happy to keep working through the distance requirements, as well as, that's a good question, if something does keep shifting back after a snow emergency or something like that, we should consider maybe not putting it there in the first place. Happy to even assess it in that light as well.
When your engineers go out and decide, yes, this is a great place. I put planters in my own district, not by fire hydrants, by the way. But how do you expect the FDNY to gain access to those hydrants when you've not heard back from them, you've not followed up with them, and you know that it is within in less than 15 feet from the hydrant?
Well, we would never purposely place something within the 15 to 30 foot range. That's like that's our guideline. That's something that we've.
But wait. The videos and the pictures contradict what you're saying. They are being deliberately put there.
Not by our engineers, planners, or the people
Well,
who are
by the
installing
DOT,
them.
but who's giving the guidance? Who says this would be the great place for it? Right?
Yeah, our design standards do not allow any elements to be placed within 30 feet of a hydrant. So things shift, things change because of other.
Those cannot shift. Those planters cannot shift unless they are plowed into by a car and broken into a million pieces. They weigh tons. Those boulders cannot shift. That's why they weigh what they do and they're placed. So do you understand that if they cannot pull, if the fire department cannot pull next to a hydrant, that they have to block the street where other emergency vehicles need to get through in a case of an emergency, and precious moments are lost? Is that taken into consideration at all? You know that. You know that consciously. Correct?
Yeah, our guidance from the fire department has been keep 15 feet on either side of these elements clear for their operations, and that's what we do.
It's what you need to do. It's not what you have done. And even in an area where it is 15 feet, it is still not enough. You really have to use the guidance from the FDNY. And now that we understand with the new commissioner that there will be more eyes on any type of information you send over, but you have no right, no matter how long it takes for the fire department to answer, you have no right not to follow up and to just go out and put boulders, ballards, bike racks, planters on the street near a fire hydrant or in an area that will hinder fire trucks from getting to an emergency and our EMS ambulances. Next video. The next video shows men plowing the bicycle lane section of an open street, but not the open lane. And this has been a complaint that my office gets continuously. Only the bike lane section of an open street is being plowed and removed with from snow. That particular open street in the video remains unplowed as of today. So why is it that only the bike lane is being plowed and not the vehicular lane that would be utilized by our emergency vehicles as well as our motorists? There still are motorists in this city. So for the FDNY,
Have a location?
Yes.
What's the location?
Say again? 34th Avenue.
Beats and bounds.
Is this a block that's
Fulton and Fulton.
permanently closed?
Yes.
So on those locations,
Oakland.
the fire department emergency lane is often used. That's where we plow and clear the road if it's so vehicles aren't meant to be in those spaces ever. The emergency lane, the access lane, encompasses the bike lane and additional space. We're not cleaning the bike lane specifically. We're cleaning the fire access lane.
Well, okay. We don't have a picture of that. But I saw if we could just put that picture back up. It's not wide enough for a fire truck to go down.
We have a standard that we met with fire department of, I forget the number of feet off the top of my head, but we always, all our clear zones, all the guidance we give to the people who clear the space for us is met to the standard of the FDNY clear zone needs.
Would you agree with that, Chief?
I'm not familiar with that conversation, but we need 15 feet of clearance. That's the clearance that we need. We don't use the bike lanes because we're concerned that we could actually hit a bicyclist in that bike lane. But we do need 15 feet of clearance to get down any street. The apparatus itself is 9 feet 3 inches, 9 feet 6 inches. Then we have to put our outriggers out, which are an additional 6 feet on each side, hence the angling of the apparatus. So yeah, we need some space. They're big pieces of apparatus.
Have you ever had complaints from your firehouses that they have not been able to get down the bike lane because it wasn't wide enough?
They don't
Or
use
they haven't been able to make the turn into the bike lane because of other things like planters and boulders?
We don't use a bike lane, and we don't stress our members to use a bike lane.
Okay. So how would you get down that closed street in order to get to a home that was on fire?
With that much
business.
with that much snow, we would just try to get down the street as best as possible with the chains on the apparatus. We would need the street to be cleared.
What if there were the impediments that we've been discussing? Then how would you get down?
We wouldn't be able to get down.
Thank you. On to the next.
Again, though, we do have a clear lane in every single one of those closed streets that we keep free of impediments, making sure that the fire trucks can access them. We're not blocking off those spaces. That's the area that's getting cleaned. It happens to have green paint under it, but is the clean space for emergency access. And I can share all of the emergency access plans at our open streets with the fire department if they want to be able to share that with local houses if they haven't already.
That'll be great. We'll continue with that.
It would be great if you
conversation.
shared anything with the local firehouses. Let's go to the picture. Okay. Do I have a photo of it here? Mm-hmm. Do we not have it? Okay. So we're now showing a photograph of a school with a street in front of one of their exits. The street is blocked off by metal barriers and a huge planter. Chief, are you able to see that photo on? Might even be on your screen if you can pull it up. Do you think it's ever a good idea to block off streets near a school to have an open street?
No, I do not think that's a good idea. That looks like there would have to be some conversation here before that planter was put there. It's very, I could see from here, it's very difficult to make that turn.
Yeah, that's PS 149, by the way. So if you were asked by the DOT, you would have rejected that plan.
We would have modified that plan. We would have done something a little differently.
Just to be clear, we did meet on that project on site in the field with the fire department and did discuss planter placement. The planters are placed in a way that the fire department can go around them and moving that metal barricade access that street. And happy to show those auto turns and bring those designs and plans back up for discussion. But this was one project, the 34th Avenue project, where we had a lot of on-the-ground conversations with the local firehouse and FDNY.
So they would have to exit the apparatus, move the metal barriers, and then get back in and go down the street.
Yeah, unless we have our partner on the ground there, if during school hours, school personnel is there to move those barricades.
Okay, so how is the school to know that there's a fire all the way down the block and they need to come out? Like what you're saying, just you need to go back and listen to this video because what you're saying just doesn't make sense. And that's why we needed to have this hearing, because it is imperative that the fire department is involved and the local firehouse is involved in every single movement that the DOT makes that will change the configuration of a street. I will now ask if any of my fellow colleagues have questions. Councilmember Wong.
Yep. I think you need to review the positions of the boulders and the planters and move them if necessary, because this is a citywide problem. I see them in my district, and it certainly is makes no sense to rely on the firefighters to move them, and planters very difficult and boulders impossible. So please. to review. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Yes, Councilmember Felder.
I'm just curious. In other words, the chair has, I think, repeated. I, what is the process before these things are placed wherever they are placed? Is there always an on-site meeting between a rep from the closest firehouse and from DOT?
No, we do rely on our auto turn, our engineers, and the guidance from FDNY on where to make these placements.
So I'm just, it's easy for me to give advice, but I'm just suggesting that as a result of a lot that's been, said, I think it would be a great idea if before anything is changed, that there be on-site visits to locations so that that it actually, because there's nothing, on paper it's just not the same. Or yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you so much for coming today, for giving testimony and answering all questions, and this panel is dismissed.
Thank you.
If you could just exit the room quickly and without much discussion, that would be greatly appreciated. We need to get to the public testimony. Thank you. Now I'd like to open the hearing for public testimony.
First, I'd like to thank the council for holding this hearing and for the passage of Local Law 6. Despite what was testified to today, in the absence of a law like this, many of bike lanes throughout the city have been placed without the fire department's approval and have dramatically obstructed fire department response. Whether intentional or inadvertent, it doesn't matter. It just puts lives at risk. Both unions, I would say, are here for one reason and one reason only: to clearly state that we are not against bike lanes. We are against bike lanes that compromise the safety of New Yorkers or firefighters. The reason that the protected bike lanes are so problematic is they are the ones that narrow the streets the most significantly. And when they narrow the streets that significantly, it makes laddering a building, it makes gaining access to an upper floor, it makes ventilation, makes putting a hose line in place more difficult. And that puts lives at risk. And that isn't always measurable and tangible as much as the statistics regarding lives saved. My fear about statistics is they oftentimes don't fully represent the risks that are at stake in these trade-offs or compromises in providing biker safety along with public safety at the same time. So some of the flaws that were exposed in this meeting, I think, need to be corrected and corrected immediately. I think the department needs to dedicate more resources so we're not relying on the individual officer for the day they receive a piece of paper noting that they should evaluate the overall risk of how a change in street patterns might affect the response of all surrounding units. I think that team should be expanded out so that they have a more stringent workflow that dictates the things they should be concerned about. The narrowing of streets, the response pattern, the proximity of buildings to the sidewalk, the ability to ladder, the ability of an engine to move out of the way so the proper ladder can get in front of the building, the ability to attack the fire from both sides of the street so we don't have limited resources. When the chief testified that a 4-alarm fire would have over 200 firefighters, it's also going to have an excess of several, probably 50 to 100 rigs by the time we include the chiefs, the specialty units, and EMS. Where will these rigs go and how will they flow? And every time we make these changes, we never measure impact. We have measured the impact on life safety. Has anyone ever recorded the impact when these street narrowings had on a fire, whether it led to a multiple alarm, whether or not it led to a longer response? When the fire department talks about a response time, it's when the first unit arrives. If that's a ladder, it means there's no water resource on scene. If that's only an engine, it means there's no rescue taking place because the engine is in the role of putting out the fire. And are other units being obstructed after the fact that requires to a multiple alarm? This needs to be a better coordination, and this needs to be decided upon well in advance and not fixed after the fact when life has been compromised or safety has been jeopardized only because it's been brought to the attention of DOT. It's a waste of resources and it's a public safety asset. This needs to be more coordinated from the start with both the department and DOT.
Thank you so much, and I couldn't agree more.
Good morning, council members, and thank you for having me today. I would like to, again, support what Jim Rosie has said here today on the need for better coordination. I fully support this law, and I feel that I've heard from all of my members around the city that these planters or bike lanes have been put up without enough input from the department or the local firehouse. But also, I think it's imperative that the DOT assist in training the members of the department that are going to handle this task. As Jim will agree, that local firehouses are tasked with so many different expertises that they're not experts in. And this is just another thing that they don't know, the flow of traffic. We can understand when you put a rig there, but we need to know what the laws are, and we should also be trained. There should be a specialized unit, which the department did mention, but they need to be trained by the DOT as what to look for so they can coordinate better. And none of these changes should be made until a full review by a trained department unit is done in coordination with the DOT. We can't just have these bike lanes put up in areas where it obstructs the flow of traffic. And again, the studies need to be done after these things are put up to show how it affected the flow of traffic, how it affected the flow of traffic in the area. And one thing that I've never heard anyone give any consideration to is the loss of parking. Has anyone calculated how many parking spots have been lost due to all of the additional DOT changes due to bike lanes and planters and open spaces? When you have no parking, cars just continually circle around looking for it, which only adds to the traffic. And the other issue that I don't believe has been studied is the impact on days like today when you have piles of snow in these areas. As I drove through the city, I saw nothing but bike lanes filled with snow. You've just totally taken that lane of traffic away, and it's absolutely useless at this point in time. And then the snow is backed up against the barricades, creating an even narrower pathway. But the last problem that I want to mention is that when you take away all this parking and you remove the ability for sanitation to get the snow off the street, you then have people that have nowhere else to park, and they end up parking in the fire hydrant. And we've seen that in the last few years, above all the other years that where there's nowhere to park, they park in the fire hydrant because nobody thinks they're going to have a fire. But we always show up when people are wrong, and it makes it harder for us to get the hoses to the fire hydrant and the hoses up to the building. So all these things need to be studied, and some consideration has to be done about what are we doing about the lack of parking, because those cars are still out there and they're parking illegally, causing an even more dangerous situation. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate all the work you've done here today.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, Mike Schreiber. I'm the Health and Safety Officer for the Uniform Firefighters Association. Jimmy and Andy make some great broader points. As an Astoria resident, second due to the debacle on 31st Street and an avid cyclist, I just want to talk about that briefly. I bike to work, to the office. There is no overflow or necessity to take away from the Crescent bike lane. There is no need for it. It's not as if there's a tremendous amount of traffic on there. Being second due to 31st Street, the area in question, I can attest that pushing that rig into the street is going to limit the ability for that aerial to get to the third or fourth floor. You're going to be screwed if you're above that level. We will not be able to get aerials to you. Even a firefighter to the roof at that point, if that is a standalone building. This creates huge problems for us, and it's unnecessary. We don't need a bike lane there in that spot. Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate that, and I appreciate that we get it from the perspective of an avid cyclist. And to both your points, President Brosi and President Ansborough, we will be looking into those studies that both of you mentioned. We will bring that to the attention of both the DOT and the FDMY. Councilmember Palladino?
Yes, you mentioned numbers. When the bike share program started in 2013, the popularity grew from 92,598 annual members to 235,867 annual members as of 2025. As cycling in the city reports, City Bike makes it more convenient for New Yorkers, blah, blah, blah. But to make point to point, there are, as of December 2025, 2,925 active city bike stations and 33,095 bikes in fleet, with an additional 3,400 additional bike parking spaces. And there are currently 1,550 more bike lanes. That's over 555 miles of protected bike lanes in the city, making this the largest bicycle network in North America. So there's your numbers. We got to do something about this. It's time for the new commissioner of DOT to revisit what they consider to be safety bike lanes and how it impedes on the job that you have to do in rescuing New Yorkers and just being firemen. The idea that they are even burdening you with DOT is insane. This whole thing is ridiculous. We're talking about planters. I mean, think about what we're talking about here today. Weigh it out. Makes no sense. But we have numbers, we have data, we have a new commissioner. Let's try to shake hands and try to figure out a conversation that could be had so that any existing bike lanes that happen to be in your areas that you need to get to can be eliminated. How about that? Let's see.
But there must be a mechanism to measure the impact of these bike lanes when we have large-scale fires, when we have delayed in responses beyond the first unit. You will be crippled with data on the amount of lives saved by putting in these other protections. Somebody needs to gather data on the impact. You didn't know you had a candle issue fire till we started tracking it. You didn't know you had an e-bike issue fire until we started tracking it.
Right.
No one is tracking the impact of these lanes and response times, expanding fires, or life safety.
Duly noted. 25, just FDNY responded to more than 25,000 structural fires during the fiscal year of 26. That's ridiculous. It's a crazy number. And you guys got to do, we're going to work on this because this is crazy. This is meat and potatoes. Okay.
And President Brosi, to your previous point, for real data, proactive data, we will be putting in legislation for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Wong.
Back to the boulders and the bollards and bins, trash bins that are put near the fire hydrants. We talk a lot about the boulders, but where are the bins? Why are the bins there? Do anybody know? Want to talk?
Sanitation.
Why would they near? Should we let?
That's the new thing with sanitation.
That was a mandate from the previous mayor, and the bins, yeah. So we're addressing that as well on other levels.
Please. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's my question.
And also the bids usually use them as well. Okay. Yes, of course. Councilmember Felder.
We don't have to worry about the bins because they're going to change it again and make them put the garbage in their basements. So they'll get rid of the bins probably. But I just wanted to mention on record that the bicyclists are not mandated to wear helmets. Again, we talk about safety and all of that. They're putting, making special lanes and everything else. The city bike program, you don't have to wear helmets or anything else like that. There is no record. You talk about statistics about safety, with a vacuum in the numbers. I appreciated that. But another area, I'm just being succinct. And that's the end of it.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming down, waiting throughout this. It was a long hearing and it's continuing on, but I think a lot of light was shed where there was darkness before. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to turn to Zoom, where we have the president of the EMS union, Oren Barzilay.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, council members, for having me on. I apologize for not being there in person. I'm up in Albany doing some work here as well, but I'll get straight to it just to echo what my colleagues have been saying. Every year, the mayor puts out the MMR report, and year after year, it shows response times going up for EMS and fire. While bike lanes might save bike riders' lives, they cost the lives of those calling 911 for help, whether it be for EMS, fire, or police. New York City's 911 system is the busiest in the country, if not the world. We process roughly 15 to 20,000 calls between fire, police, and EMS. Councilmember Ressler highlighted the safety of the bike riders. But what about those 15 to 20,000 people who are needing help immediately? The statistics are flawed, as Councilmember Felder said, and I'm here to support this resolution or this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
For our next panel, I'd like to call up Julianne Forsyth, Alex Greger,
Hello, my name's Alex Greger. I'm a Brooklyn resident. I live on Court Street. I'm former highway superintendent from Southampton. I was the 2021 president of the New York State Highway Superintendents Association. I recently retired from Cornell. I was a safety instructor for Cornell Local Roads Program, And I'm here because I'm concerned about the response of emergency vehicles on Court Street, recently redesigned, where they took away the parking, made the floating parking. This was done, I was walking down the street. I am a cyclist. I am a pedestrian. This is down by Baltic and Court. It was the 9th of January. The ambulance, I heard it coming down from Atlantic Avenue. It was boxed in. It couldn't go anywhere. That's taking time. I was a volunteer ambulance attendant in Hampton Bays with the Legion Ambulance. This is out my fourth-story window. I'm on an old walk-up. This is a fire truck. I can look up Court Street out my window, and I can look in front. I could hear the sirens fighting down the street. There's no place for the cars to pull over to let them go. They get stacked up so bad that people ahead don't even hear the fire truck behind. It's terrible. The design works on a sunny August day when there's no traffic. Any other time, it's chaos. And in the snow, it's crazy. During the last snowstorm, I went out with my measuring wheel, and I've got lane measurements of 7 to 6.8 feet. We heard they need 15 to 20 feet. I'm not a fireman, but I was a commercial driver, and I know they were talking about outriggers. When there's a 20 to 40-inch snowbank pushed up, how are they going to set their outriggers up for their
Time
truck?
expired.
They're not going to be able to do that. I have a few more, but I appreciate your time.
And I appreciate this package that you put together, and we will certainly go through it.
Okay. May I have 30 seconds?
You can wrap up in 30 seconds, of course.
I'd like to talk about the numbers that you hear. Court Street, the basis of the redesign, 155 accidents in 23 years, 2 fatalities. One was at Atlantic Avenue, a major road. The other one was at Hamilton. That's the Kamikaze, Mad Max Road. That's what they're using to base the protected bike lane. If you take the 155 number and divide it by the amount of years, that comes to 7 accidents a year. No accidents are good, but they're using voodoo math. You hear in Staten Island that they've improved the safety by 37%. So let me offer this. If there were 10 accidents and they made it four better, that's 40%. They can bang their chest. Usually you take a 5-year look. They're taking 23 years and they're using 9 months and they're coming back with this voodoo math. The rocks. Here's the one that's been pushed out of the way, okay? Here it is, hit by the snowplow in this last thing. A road should be predictable. The bicycle lane plow should not have to expect hitting a boulder in the road.
We
Road should
completely
be
agree.
practical.
Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
testimony, and again, for the package you put together for us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Ms. Forsythe, thank you for your patience.
Hi, thank you, Council. My name is Julianne Forsythe. I am a firefighter at Engine 224 in Brooklyn Heights. I also hold a master's in emergency management, so I'm very passionate about improving the safety in my area. Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill area, over 250 firefighters respond to this area on an everyday basis. The changes that were made recently by the DOT significantly impede our operations as the engine is required to have the best connection to the hydrants. These connections are impeded by boulders, public sanitation bins, heavy planters, dining tables, bike racks, plastic ballasts. Myself, I, wearing gear, am 250 pounds. I am expected, according to DOT, to get off of my rig with full gear, exert maximum energy, push the planter out of the way, get back onto the rig, and then perform my duties as a firefighter, exerting maximum energy to protect my community if a fire occurs. In 2021, a fire occurred on Montague Street, which is the area that I had mentioned, where firefighters became trapped, firefighters were injured, and firefighters were burned. On the same street I am talking about, that I need to see that these obstructions removed from our hydrants. I do believe that this is our chance to be proactive as opposed to reactive, as I fear that our community is at risk of serious injuries, not only the firefighters, but also to the members that I proudly serve with. Um, I am requesting these changes to be made urgently, and I would like for these changes that did happen over the last few months to be reconsidered because they were not consulted with my local firehouse or any of the officers in my firehouse. So I urgently ask City Council to please make changes
Time
to improve the
expired.
safety of my firehouse and my community, which I took the oath to serve.
Thank you for your compelling testimony, both of you, and thank you both for your service.
Thank you.
I support the law. I disagree with Mr. Rising.
Now, time starts now.
Mr. Bernstein, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Madam Chair.
Okay, you can begin your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you again for inviting me to join today, and it's been illuminating to listen to all the testimony. I'm not going to repeat much of what has been said here already today. As you know, I represent members of the community on 31st Street and on Court Street in connection with the litigations that we've been have filed against the Department of Transportation, and we were grateful that the court in Queens directed the DOT to remove what it's done in terms of the protected bike lanes. Although I would note that they were given 30 days to do that, and nothing has been removed to date. And according to DOT, conditions because of the weather have prevented them, but hopefully they'll move shortly to do that, even though I understand they're intending to reintroduce reconfiguration. What we found and what we discovered and brought to both courts' attention is that DOT did not comply with local law 6 in either case, to the extent that it consulted with the fire department at all. It essentially ignored whatever information and advice and direction it received, and that's one of the prevailing problems here, which is that even though the law requires them to consult and to certify, which they did not do in either case, it doesn't require them to agree or to integrate the changes that the fire department, emergency services, mayor's office of disabilities suggest, and so that
Time expired.
they continue to move forward with an agenda that is solely motivated by these protected bike lanes, with statistics that are easily refuted, that don't demonstrate the lack of safety that the DOT says is the consideration here. The only real consideration, and I know the council member brought it up before, is how do they create 50 miles of bike lanes, protected bike lanes, a year? And that is unfortunately the tail wagging this dog. So I would urge the council to readdress that mandate and to continue to enforce the necessity of DOT protecting the communities through the fire services, through emergency services, and making sure that they have the ability to do what they need to do, which should be the priority here, which is to protect the members of the community.
Agreed. Thank
Thank
you
you for
so
your
much.
time, and I have appreciated listening to everything everyone had to contribute here.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Mr. Mirabella, can you hear us?
Time starts now.
Yes, I can.
Please begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for shedding light on this matter. But I want to talk about why we're here. And it's because there's been a systemic pattern by DOT to circumvent local law 6. And they got caught on 31st Street. So let's talk about what happened. Going as far back as 2023, when one of our businesses had a fire, a 3-alarm fire that required the FDNY to access the building from multiple points. In a sworn testimony, sworn affidavit to the courts, the CEO of this business said, had DOT's plan been implemented prior to the fire, I do not think FDNY would have been successful in saving our location. This is a concern that we've brought up over and over and over to the DOT in our conversations with them, which were entirely disingenuous. The DOT, a high-ranking member of the DOT, and I won't mention any names, said verbatim, I don't need their approval when it came to the fire department. And lo and behold, just a couple of months later, the plan was finalized. And then we got a smoking gun letter from the fire department, which further reinforced our concerns, which states the FDNY has encountered significant operational and response difficulty at elevated subway structures due to restricted maneuverability caused by columns and overhead track systems limiting apparatus positioning and turning radius. They do not allow FDNY to operate at full capacity. And without adequate ladder apparatus placement, the subject location prevents a severe risk to life and safety of citizens and first responders. And they end that letter by saying, with appreciation to the New York City Department of Transportation's close collaboration with the FDNY to provide optimal safety measures throughout New York City, the fire department deems the installation of the subjective protected bike lane on 31st
Time
Street
expired.
is too great of a life safety hazard risk to install and cannot support the implementation due to inherent safety concerns. So I am very appreciative that we were able to get together today to discuss this. And I think that there needs to be more oversight going forward. And I'm very happy to see the fire department finally pushing back on DOT. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mirabella, for your testimony. Our next panel is Walter Adler, Thomas Mena, Andrew Farina, Mera. Oh, Herrera. I'm so sorry. It was handwriting. No, not yours, Josh's.
I had your name right.
Yes. David Bezprovsny and Julia Passat.
Yes.
Yes. No worries. Okay, if everyone is settled in, we'll go with ladies first.
Okay, my name is Julia Passoff. I live in Jackson Heights, Queens. 34th Avenue is my block. We've had 26 blocks of open streets since 5 years ago, when they did it right after COVID, right during COVID, when they didn't have any kind of meetings with us at the neighborhood. But okay, that's in the past. Right now, I could see from my window, 34th Avenue. I could see, when I hear sirens, I run over to my window and I watch, and I see the fire trucks guys having to get out, go and move the barricades. Not only that, but I also see the fire trucks backing up and forth several times because of the huge, gigantic concrete rectangle blocks, the huge flower pots and bollards. So I have seen it in person Those videos are from my group in Jackson Heights. We've been trying, group of neighbors trying to get the DOT's attention, which hasn't happened. So we're really in a bad spot because we were the first ones to get these open streets, and everything is wrong with it. So the fire trucks have to go back and forth many times because of the daylighting medium and the corners filled with huge cement blocks, giant flower pots, and bollards. All of this takes at least, I would guess, in my opinion, what I count from my window is 10 seconds of response time. Okay, and also what they said, the DOT said here about that bike lane that's being plowed in the middle of the night, that is not an emergency lane. That is way too small to be an emergency lane. They have blocks there, flower pots, chairs, tables. A fire truck cannot get back
Time
through there.
expired.
One more thing, the DOT cannot manage these streets, okay? They have partners. The partners are not doing their jobs. They are not there. There's two different partners available supposedly on 34th Avenue, and they are not doing their jobs, taking care of the avenue. It's broken down. There's foliage all missing all over the floor, and they're supposed to be by the barricades, moving the barricades. They are not doing their job. So the DOT either has to get on better partners or do it themselves, and we know that it's not going to happen, so.
Thank you so much for the information you've shared and the testimony you've given today. Sir?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. So let me be direct. Good morning, my name is Tom Herrera, and I am a District 4 resident my entire life. I've been an EMT since 2002, and I've worked Manhattan 911 since 2009. I'm here today as a private citizen, someone who lives this system every single day. Let me be direct again. New York City EMS is at a tipping point. Response times for life-threatening emergencies are now pushing 11 to 12 minutes. They were just 9.5 just 5 years ago. That gap costs lives, and the reason is simple. There's just no ambulances. Not because they don't exist, but because the people that staff them just don't come to work. And why would they? An average EMT with the fire department starts at around $18 or $19 an hour. And after 5 years of dealing with trauma, rotating shifts, days away from family, dealing with the forgotten and the suffering, they top out about half of what a firefighter makes, half. That's not a gap, that's disrespect. And the ones that we do lose, they're the best that we have. The teachers, the experienced medics and EMTs, we don't just fill seats, but we want to train the next generation the right way. New York citizens deserve better. Pay parity is not charity. Pay EMS a living wage, and I promise you, we will come to work. Funded in 2027. Set real unit and response standards. Invest in EMS workers' mental health, and the fix is known. Thank you, and I yield my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, and we do support everything you've said in your testimony. Sir?
Thank you all for your civic leadership. We also thank the FDNY and the UFA for their bravery. We are here today, however, to speak for some of the interests of the best, the ambulance service, the EMS. We see these local laws, as discussed today, as impacting both firefighters and ambulances. Anything that obstructs an engine will obstruct an ambulance. That then said, we do point to the fact that this law gave a clear way that the FDNY and the Department of Transportation couldn't coordinate, and it would be a little bit harder to do that with the ambulance service because we have 70 different agencies. In 4 sectors, about 4,500 in the FDNY, of course, about 2,000 just in Hatsala in the volunteers, 36 other volunteers. We have at least 15 privates, 6,000 more people. And this data, I know you all have the most up-to-date data, and I don't really come here today to try to pull heartstrings with how hard we have it out here, but we do have it quite hard no matter what sector we're in. 100%. When Justin Brannon brought the Department of EMS concept, I see how that flies in the face of people's logic. But the idea behind it was not to rip EMS out of the heart of the fire department, but to allow some way to coordinate our ambulance services. That then said, I would just for a second know that today's hearing is about obstructions, it's about agency coordination, and we try to be relevant within the civics that are involved here. We do not want a solution for EMS that takes away from fire and PD. We just want a seat at the table as a service to be taken as seriously and to be paid as respectively so people stay. We believe that a hearing must be called to deal with the EMS issue. It has been in the past, and we'd like it with all the actors, the hospital actors, the privates, everybody else. We know that FDNY EMS has been hurting. And certainly, we are here to say we very much want FDNY EMS to achieve a level of parity with the firefighters and have a fair contract. But as a whole, a workforce of 15,500 that is very diverse and very spread out across the city. We just ask for your civic leadership in dealing with the EMS issue so we could take our place alongside PD and fire as a third important service unified in the city. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Sir.
Good afternoon, Chair Ariola and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this oversight hearing on the implementation of Local Law 6. This law recognizes something fundamental, that the decisions of the New York City Department of Transportation and the operational realities of New York City Fire Department are inseparable. Street design, open streets, bike lane projects are not just transportation issues, they are emergency response issues. When coordination is weak, response times suffer. When response times suffer, New Yorkers suffer. When EMS suffers, New York City suffers. My name is David Besprasvani. I'm an incoming medical student, and I've worked and volunteered at EMS agencies across New York City for the past 8 years, on 911 ambulances in Manhattan and Brooklyn, in interfacility hospital transport, and with one of the more than 36 volunteer ambulance agencies citywide. I want to be clear, when EMS system has management issues, begins to rely on volunteer units as routine stopgaps for 911 coverage, or cannot reach someone in an emergency in time, it's not a sign of resilience, it's a warning sign. It means the system is strained. Since I began working in 2018, ambulance response times have steadily increased. From publicly available data, we are now projecting to approaching nearly double pre-pandemic emergency response times this year, approaching over 12.8 minutes for life-threatening emergencies and over 28 minutes for non-life-threatening emergencies. This is not a statistic. This is difference between life and death in cardiac arrest, stroke, trauma, or respiratory failure, just to name a few. This is not This is not accidental. It reflects structural interagency failure, declining EMS staffing, burnout from excessive overtime, inadequate mental health support, pay that does not reflect the life or death stakes of the work, and yes, even administrative decisions surrounding street safety. Nearly half of EMTs and paramedics work over 40 hours a week, maintain holding multiple full-time jobs, and delays should not be built into the feature of emergency response in New York. If this council is serious about public safety and street safety and about meaningful interagency coordination, then EMS must be part of that conversation. We need EMS-specific mental health funding, pay parity with fire and police, and long-term structural reform. The current fire-based management model is struggling to meet the city's 911 call demand, the majority of which is handled solely by EMS providers. A serious discussion about a standalone EMS department is warranted. Transportation policy, fire operations, and medical response are all interconnected. Coordination must be real, not procedural, because New Yorkers' lives and well-being depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I believe we have 2 more panelists via Zoom. Ms. DeSetta, are you there? Maxine DeSetta?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
We can hear you. Please begin.
My name is Maxine DeSetta. I'm a lifelong resident of New York City. I represent 600 residents of our community, which catchment is from 102nd Street to 103rd Street, from Broadway to Riverside Drive. Our community has been jeopardized by the redesign of our block, and it has been reduced to 9.5 feet wide. We complained years ago to DOT, and we got really no response. We had a town hall, but in fact, the town hall was inundated by people who were for these designs, transportation alternatives. I was arrested in October 2023 when DOT came to start redesigning our street between Amsterdam and Broadway. Right now, our street is still narrowed to 9.5 feet against regulations for emergency lane of 15 feet. We have boulders, we have everything that has been described here still in our streets. A letter from DOT dated March 2023 said that this design was submitted by the Open Streets Community Coalition. This is not a real, this is a fabrication. We have been not able to present to CB7 the danger of this design, and I have worked with the fire department that did finally come to our street, but we still have the same issue. 9.5 feet, even bicyclists don't want to. This is now a shared
Time
street.
expired.
I just have 2 seconds more, please.
That's fine.
And
You can wrap up.
we really need remediation and to have this street not reconfigured, but returned to its original state. We've had 2 fires on August 8th, 2024, and December 15th, 2025, where a woman, 83 years old, was killed. This is long past the date of what could have happened if any of our agencies, including DOT, even responded to our, concerns. And also, even bicyclists hate this street because they cannot share such a narrow street with cars. Not to mention the parking that we desperately need has been reduced. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you so
this.
much for your testimony, ma'am.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Wong has a quick question I'm sorry, Councilmember Felder has a quick question for you.
Yes.
I just want to know why you were arrested.
Well, this happens when nobody will listen.
Oh.
CB7 turned their back on us, wouldn't listen to our concerns. DOT never responded.
Yeah, but you're not answering my question. You don't have to answer it. I just want to know why you're arrested. By the way, I'm very proud of you. I just want to know how.
But we're
Well,
off
yes,
topic then.
I became infamous on X, which I had never been on before.
Mr. Seta, if I just may interject, our office will be reaching out to you.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to say I was arrested because I was standing in the middle of the street when DOT came, unknown to us, when they started to redesign the street. I was in the middle. They could have redesigned the street with me in the middle.
Well, you're a flower pot. Why did they arrest you?
Thank you so much. We're now going over to
I wouldn't
Angelo.
get out of the street I wouldn't get out of the street when the police said move. Essentially.
Thank you for your testimony. Now, Angelo Ferrara, are you there?
Time starts now.
Yes. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Your testimony begins.
Of course. Thank you for everyone gathering, given the occasion today. I just wanted to be short and brief and, jump right to the point. So there was a gathering with a lot of local businesses, specifically on 31st Street in the Dutch Kills area. And the meeting took place on May 1st in 2025. There were about 50 people in attendance, and one thing that absolutely shocked me was Jason Benray was on site, and when asked the question if he had FDNY approval, it was clearly stated by him that FDNY approval was not necessary for the progression of this project or design, which absolutely shocked me. I ended up actually walking out of that meeting after that statement because I knew there was going to be absolutely no progress or any listening that was going to happen that was going to be progressive from that meeting, given that that standard comment was made. So just wanted to make note of that, and I was quite shocked.
Thank you so much. That's very insightful. We appreciate that. Thank you for sharing.
And just also wanted to make note that that meeting was recorded. So if and I know DOT I think did the recording of that session. I think it would be important to reference that videotape to see when that footage was taken and that comment that was made, because that I think is pretty significant.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure.
Has anyone in the audience not been heard that filled out a sheet? Anyone on Zoom, Josh? We have now heard from everyone who has signed up to testify. If we inadvertently missed anyone who would like to testify in person, please visit the sergeant's table and complete a witness slip now. If we inadvertently missed anyone who would like to testify virtually, please raise your hand. Use the raise hand function, and a member of our staff will call on you in the order of hands raised. Seeing no one else, I would like to note again that written testimony, which will be reviewed in full by committee staff, may be submitted to the record up to 72 hours after the close of this hearing by emailing it to testimony@council.nyc.gov. I would once again like to thank our council staff, our council attorney, Josh Kingsley, William Hongash, Phyllis Incerillo, our chief of staff, this panel that sits on the committee with me for their insightful questions, the testimony that was given today from those of you who took the time to Zoom in or come in person. You've been heard, and it really was. This is our first hearing for 2026, and I believe it was compelling, it was enlightening, and I believe that changes will be made because of it. Thank you all so much. We are now concluded.